All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ad Q&A Live episode 12. I'm Nick Sinitra, and today we are talking about Facebook lookalike audiences. What are they? How do you make them? Why should you use them? And all that stuff. So let's get into it. All right. So first off, what are they? Short version is basically you feed Facebook some data, and Facebook is going to spit out an audience of people that are like the people that you fed it. Right? And there's basically two different types of data that you can feed Facebook for them to build a lookalike audience. So one of them is going to be pixel data. So for instance, if I want to build a lookalike audience of people who have purchased before, I can base it on the purchase pixel as a custom audience. Alternatively, if I have just a bunch of user data from, let's say, Shopify, and I want to export it, upload that as a custom audience, then I can build a lookalike audience off of that. So what actually is a custom audience, or sorry, a lookalike though? So a lookalike, basically what happens is you feed the data into Facebook, and then Facebook is first going to try to match them, right? So for a pixel-based audience, it's a non-issue because Facebook already knows that it's a Facebook user and blah, blah, blah. But if you're uploading a list of users, or purchasers, let's say, Facebook is basically going to go through, and the first thing they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, John Smith, this name and the email address johnsmith@aol.com, they're going to see if that person is a Facebook user. And they're going to do that for every single person on the list. And then once they have the full list of matched records, they're going to essentially build sort of a persona or a meta profile of the people that are on that list. So they'll do the analysis and see, okay, well, relative to the Facebook user base as a whole, people in this audience are 20% more likely to be in a particular age range, or 40% more likely to have this particular interest. And they sort of build the persona around that. And that becomes the basis for the lookalike, right? And then you have basically different percentages of lookalike, which we'll explain more. We're going to actually do a bit of a platform demo, and we're going to show you in the platform how to build the custom audiences, whether it's pixel-based or seed list-based, and then how you use that to build a lookalike audience. Cool. So how do you make them? Let's jump into it right now. What I'm going to do is pull this up. So we're going to hide this and that, and we're going to pull up this and that. Okay. Now, let's walk through it. So bear with me just a moment. Okay, so we're currently in the Facebook Business Manager. This says Asset Library, but the way that you're going to get here is when you're logged into your Business Manager, you go to Audiences over here. If this doesn't show up, sometimes you have to click on this little guy here that says All Tools. Okay, so I've already created a bunch of stuff, but we'll just go through the process again just to demonstrate. So first, let's run through the process of creating a custom audience based on a pixel file, right? And then we'll look at how you upload a custom audience from a CSV or XLSX file and all that stuff. And then the process for basically building a lookalike will be the same regardless of the data source. So let me show you the two things first. So first off, pixel-based. Super simple. We're going to come up here to Create Audience. We're going to choose Custom Audience. And then we're going to specify the data source for this. Now in this case, this is going to be website traffic, right? So here, I don't want this audience to comprise all website visitors. I want it to only be specific people, right? So I've already built this out, so I'll kind of show you the basic process and then I'll just use the ones I've already got. But let's say for the sake of argument, I want to build a lookalike audience of people that have submitted a lead to adQuadrant's contact form, right? So I want to reach more people who are interested in us by targeting people that are like the people that have already contacted us, right? So here, instead of doing all website visitors, right, I'm going to choose the relevant pixel. This is the right one. And I'm going to choose the appropriate event, which in this case is going to be contact, right? That's the custom event that we've created for a lead form submit on our website. And I'll go with past 30 days, but this could be, I think maximum, 180, right? So I could do 30 or 31 or 60 or 90 or 180, right? Cool. Now I can also apply additional criteria here. So if, for instance, I wanted to, do a custom audience based on, let's say people who visited a specific page, right? What I could do is, let's say I know that let's say I didn't have a pixel in place, like a custom event in place, but I do know that I had the Facebook page view pixel everywhere on my site. That's actually okay, because then I can still build a custom audience based on some URL rules. So specifically, we can click this one, right? And then let's say I know that the thank you page that shows up after somebody submitted a lead on the contact form includes /thank you, right? So what I can do is I can say people who visited specific pages in the last 30 days where that URL contains thank-you, right? This is another way that you could build a custom audience if you don't have a custom event that's firing, but you have the Facebook page view pixel on all your pages. So there's different ways you can approach it. So let's just, we can make this custom audience. So this is going to be called, let's see, TY page 30 days. Okay. So that's thank you page. Yep. Okay, cool. So we're going to go ahead and create this audience for demonstration purposes, and then we'll run through how to build a lookalike audience off of this. So I do need to, I don't know if you can hear my laptop. It sounds like it's about to launch into space right now, but I am going to hide this for 1 second. Okay, and I'm going to start the lookalike audience here. Okay, and then we're going to choose this. Okay, so let me turn this back on. All right, so the way that you're going to get here, I had to sort of hide that for a second, but the way that you get here is in that same drop-down that says create audience. You will select that, and then this time, instead of doing custom audience, you'll choose lookalike audience. And then here, you're going to put in the source, right? The source could be an upload, right, which we'll go through also in a second, or it could be our pixel-based audience, which I've created, which is right here. So that's TY page 30 days. Cool. And then audience location. Now, this one is really important. It's a little bit nuanced. When you create a custom audience, whether it's pixel-based or whether it is a CSV, an upload, those people are going to be coming from potentially all over the world, right? And the output, the lookalike audience, unless you tell it, the output is not going to have a specific geographical limitation, right? So as an example, let's say that all of the people that are contacting me, that are submitting leads on adQuadrant's website, let's just say for the sake of argument, they're all from Canada for whatever reason, right? When I build a lookalike audience, unless I explicitly tell Facebook to only give me an output of people from Canada, the output could include people from anywhere, even though the input was only Canada. Realize this is a little bit confusing, but it's just important to understand how all this stuff works. So if I want to basically create a lookalike audience, which is people in the United States, I need to specify that here, right? So, oops. Yes, okay, cool. So here, I'm going to say United States, right there, boom. Now, no matter where in the world people came from when they submitted a lead and hit the thank you page, which is what the custom audience is based on, my output audience is only going to comprise people from the United States. Now, an important point about this is that this audience now will only include people from the United States. So if I go and I try to then set targeting at the ad set level later for a different country, it's going to give me no delivery, right? I built this one around the United States. So if I plug this in as the target audience in an ad set, but then I layer targeting on top of that, I tell the ad set to serve to people in Canada, I'm going to get zero delivery because there's nobody in the target audience that's actually in Canada because of the way I set it up, right? So again, I realize that's a little bit muddy, a little bit convoluted, but basically just make sure that whoever you want to target, you specify that in here when you create the custom audience. If you don't care, right, and you want to do the targeting at the ad set level, you can just leave this blank and it will include people from all over the world. Now, audience size. So here we have to talk a bit about a couple of things. So one is that no matter how big or how small the seed list is that you feed in, or the custom audience basically, whether it's pixel-based or whether it's based on an upload of user data, a 1% lookalike is always going to be 2.2 million people. Basically what's happening is when Facebook makes the lookalike, they're effectively, I mean, if you want to think about it this way, they're effectively going to stack rank every Facebook user according to most like your platonic ideal persona meta profile that's being built by the lookalike. It's going to rank them from most similar to least similar, right? And a 1% lookalike is always basically taking that top 2.2 million people at the top of the list that are most similar to your lookalike ideal, right? And then you can see if I expand from 1% to 2%, it's going to approximately double in size from 2.2 to 4.3. If I take that up to a 3%, it goes to 6.5. Now, why would you want to do this? What are the pros and cons of going narrower versus wider? Well, the short answer is it plays on a lot of the stuff that we talked about before. Usually, the more granular you're targeting, the higher the CPMs. But it's a trade-off, a balance between sort of price and quality. So even though 1% is more granular, because these individuals are closer in terms of persona to the people who have purchased from me before, or submitted a contact before, in theory, it should be higher quality, right? So the trade-off here is the broader I go with a lookalike, potentially lower the CPM, but then I sacrifice potentially in conversion rate. And you essentially have to test and find out where that's going to balance out, right? Now, another kind of nifty feature here is that when I'm creating a lookalike audience, I can actually create more than one at once. So here, if I want to create 3 different lookalike audiences, I can basically play with these sliders and get a 0 to 1%, a 1 to 2%, and a 2 to 3%. Or if I want to make some custom brackets, I can play around with these, and now I have a 0 to 1, a 1 to 3, and a 3 to 6, right? I can basically do whatever permutation I want. So this is, in no way best practice, but I'm just going to do it like this, just for kind of, what's in giggles. So what I will say though is that generally speaking, when you're starting out with a lookalike audience, usually best to target just a 1% lookalike for starters. And then you will essentially see, okay, the conversion rate's really good, but the CPA that I'm getting basically is way too high. So at that point, you could try to then expand to, let's say, either a 0 to 2%, or you could stack essentially a 0 to 1% and a 1 to 2%, and it should effectively give you about the same thing, right? So here, we'll do just a 0 to 1, a 1 to 2, and a 2 to 3. All right, and then you can see down below, it gives you a little bit of preview of what it's going to put out. So we'll go ahead and create that. Okay. So we created our custom audience, which was the thank you page, 30 days, right? That's custom audience, and you can see that it's based on website data. And then we built off of that 3 different lookalike audiences with different sort of bands of most similar to less similar to that kind of ideal. Now, there was one thing that we skipped over was customer data, right? How you upload essentially a custom audience based on customer data. And fortunately, it's really pretty straightforward. So this time around, when you go to custom audience, instead of choosing website traffic, you would choose customer list. So right here, now let's say these are leads that people have submitted on the adQuadrant website. It's not going to include any value. It's just going to be, first name, last name, email address, what have you. So we'll pick this option, use a file that doesn't include LTV, that's lifetime value. Okay, and then here you're going to see what are the different data points that you can upload. So there's a lot of options here, as you can see: email, phone number, mobile advertiser ID, first name, last name, zip, city, etc. Right? So do you need all of this stuff? No, you don't. You don't need all of it. At a bare minimum, you need the email address, because the email address, what's going to happen is when you upload this stuff, Facebook, again, first thing they're going to do is they're going to check and see, does this person have a Facebook account? Because that's how they're then going to determine what are the characteristics that all of these people have in common, so that they can build a lookalike audience off of that. Right? So the more data you give Facebook, the better, the higher the match rate, basically, the more likely Facebook will be to find that person's account. So you technically only need email address, but as a best practice, we usually recommend getting first name, last name, email address, telephone number, if you have it, zip code. Basically, you can't have too much information, but remember, email is the bare minimum. Cool, so I upload my CSV file. I have to say where the data came from. This is kind of one of the user privacy things that they put into place within the last probably couple of quarters. So I'm going to say this is directly from customers, right? And then I'm going to upload the file, and I'm not going to go through this because I don't have a file to use right offhand. And then similar to the pixel-based audience, I would just name it right here. So the process for creation is slightly different, obviously, if you've got that list. But this could be all kinds of different stuff, right? So it could be previous purchasers, it could be people who enrolled in your newsletter, right? Even though they're not as high value as people who purchased from you, they at least had the intent to learn more about your business. So maybe you want to build a lookalike audience off of newsletter signups, right? So you go after other people that might be interested in whatever it is you're selling. right? Even if it's not based on, again, people that actually did buy. Cool. So, why should you use it? I mean, the big thing about the lookalike audience is it really bridges the gap between really sort of broad targeting, right? Just based on interests and behaviors and demographics, and really granular targeting like retargeting. These with a retargeting campaign, for instance, you might target people who added to cart but didn't purchase, right? And you know that those people are high intent, those specific individuals, because they triggered the add to cart but not the purchase, so they basically got cold feet and backed out. Now, lookalike is somewhere in between, right? These aren't the people that have interacted with you. They're people like those people, right? That's like the tribute to the best song in the world. That wasn't the best song in the world. It was a tribute to the best song in the world. That's kind of like the lookalike audience, right? So, this is it's an integral part, really, of prospecting strategy. So, as a general best practice, when we're starting out with, with the customer for the first time, we are getting their existing, purchaser data, and then we're using that to build a lookalike audience. If they had already been running on Facebook and they had a pixel already set up and they already had the custom audience already built and the lookalike around that, cool, less work for us. But a 1% lookalike, let's say, on past purchasers in the recent past is basically a core kind of anchor fundamental strategy for an e-com advertiser. And that might not be, it may not work in all cases, but generally speaking, there's going to be some amount of budget that's going to go towards that, and that's going to work, right? As long as you get the right landing page and creative and all that stuff. In terms of what percentages to start with, I mean, our recommendation for best practice would be start with a 1%, because that's going to be, again, closest to the ideal, right? And then if you see that, hey, this is giving me a good conversion rate, but it's too expensive, right? The CPM is too high. Then what you can do is you can try expanding from a 1% to a 2%. You could stack multiple lookalikes, right? Broaden it up to see if you get a lower CPM, right? Maybe your CPM goes down by 20% and your conversion rate only goes down by 5%. So maybe that's a net improvement, right, in overall performance. Cool. So we talked about what lookalikes are, why you should care, why you should use them, how you make them. Hopefully that all made sense. It does presuppose that you've got your Facebook pixel deployed and all that stuff, and that might be a topic for another time. So if you guys don't have that in place, we can cover that later. And then we talked about some of the pitfalls to watch out for. So one of the big ones was basically using kind of the wrong percentage lookalike. We talked about making sure that you get the geography set up right when you create your lookalike. Another big one, this is important, we'll kind of close with this point, is that with lookalike audiences, you have to keep in mind this idea of garbage in, garbage out. If you are trying to build a lookalike audience that has a lot of value, you have to start with a seed list that has a lot of value. So let's say you've been in business for a while and you've got 5,000 customers. Well, you could load all of them in there, but what you could also do is you could say, let me just grab like the top 500 customers that have the highest lifetime value, or highest average order values, or whatever the case may be, right? And try to skew the data a little bit to the high rollers, the big spenders, right? Or let's say you're a financial services company and you want to work with people that have credit scores over 650, right? Well, Facebook doesn't know your credit score, hopefully, right? But what you can do to sort of approximate it is when you feed the data in, you can kind of over-index on what you're trying to get out of it, right? So if you can only work with people that have a credit score of 650, if you plug in people that have a credit score of 650, you're going to get back out people that have a massive range, right? And that would technically still be true if you fed in a higher credit score, but from our anecdotal evidence, if you plug in a list of people that's only like, let's say 750 and up, you're more likely to push that up to the higher end of that scale. Okay, we covered a lot. I'm going to leave you with that for now. And yeah, hit us up in the comments if you have any questions. Once again, I'm Nick Sinitra. Thank you for watching AdQ&A Live. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.